Good morning and welcome. It's with a range of emotions, deep, deep sadness, admiration, and respect, among others, that I convene this meeting in memory of our beloved Harbor Commission Vice President Dave Arian. As most of you know, Dave passed away on January 2nd after a brave battle with cancer. Before we offer words of comfort and support to Dave's family and friends that are here today, I would like to request that you all join me in a moment of silence at this time. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Dave's family that are here with us this morning. Justine Arian, Sean Arian and Mike Bonin, Lorraine Arian, Roxanne Arian, Ethan Edwards, Jake Nielsen, Diane Middleton, and Dale McConaughey. It means so much to all of us here at the Port to have you with us today, so thank you. We're honored to have with us today elected representatives, former harbor commissioners, executives from the Port of Long Beach, leaders from the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, and many of Dave's friends and supporters. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. If you would like to offer brief remarks about Dave, there are speaker cards in the back of the room. Dave's presence and friendship was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for so many of us. The passion, the perspective, and the authenticity that he brought to everything he did is something that I quickly recognized when I joined the Board of Harbor Commissioners last year. He welcomed me wholeheartedly and with open arms and without question, which I was so grateful for. And instantly I was awestruck by Dave's integrity, passion, and moral compass. He knew in black and white, this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. He had a self-assuredness and a resoluteness that I so deeply admired. He didn't mince words for other people's benefit, which means that he never compromised the strength of his message or of his position. And so I was doubly grateful to have his leadership, experience, and wisdom here by my side as I navigated those first few months here on this commission. I came to rely on his input so much that I sorely took for granted the idea that we had many, many more months and years to work together. I learned so much from Dave in such a short time, and I deeply regret not having the opportunity to get to know him for nearly as long as all of you have. His leadership is irreplaceable, and we are devastated by his loss. And so I thank all of you for being here to share your personal memories and stories of Dave. I have the honor now of sharing a little bit more about his life. Dave Arian was born on December 4th, 1946, and grew up on 8th Street in San Pedro. He attended Cabrillo Elementary, Dana Junior High School, and San Pedro High School. Dave was 18 years old when he took a job on the Wilmington waterfront in 1965. He often joked at just 130 pounds, union supervisors were not sure he'd be able to do the physically demanding work of a longshoreman. But like many aspects of his life, he proved his skeptics wrong. That first day, loading bananas into boxcars was the start of many decades Dave would spend working on the waterfront, representing the rank and file, and leading workers and causes important to the San Pedro Bay community. As a member of the International Longshoremen Warehouse Union, Local 13, Dave held many leadership positions over the years, including 3 terms as local president. In 1991, he was elected international president of the ILWU at the age of 44. Dave eventually returned to the docks at the Port of Los Angeles and retired in 2009. Within a year, he was appointed to the Los Angeles Harbor Commission by then Los Angeles Mayor Villaraigosa and reappointed by Mayor Garcetti in 2013. During his tenure on the board, the Port of Los Angeles has repeatedly reached new cargo volume records while reducing air emissions, 2 goals which Dave was laser-focused on. Concern and support for the community, workers, and residents were woven into everything that he did. He and his family helped found the San Pedro Community Action Center in 1966. Over the years, he was an active supporter of many local service organizations, including the Toberman Neighborhood Center, Harbor Interfaith Services, and the San Pedro Boys and Girls Club, where he played as a youth. They founded the Harry Bridges Institute, an organization dedicated to educating younger longshore workers about the labor movement's rich history and community organizing. He served as president of the Harry Bridges Institute since its founding in 1993. Dave also captured the spirit of the Institute in his book, The Right to Get in the Fight, which focused on the philosophies and culture that have helped the union thrive over the decades. His involvement in non-labor-related port policy issues began even before his appointment to the Harbor Commission. In 2006, Dave was named to the Joint Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach Advisory Board for the San Pedro Bay Ports Clean Air Action Plan, which set the stage for the ports to make unprecedented strides in improving air quality in the San Pedro Bay. Dave also served on the governing board of the Intermodal Container Transfer Facility Joint Power Authority when he saw that the port could do a better job creating meaningful relationships with community organizations. Dave helped our community relations team create community investment grant programs that would set a level playing field for all local nonprofits seeking funds and support from the port. Dave also liked to do his own research in his quest for the truth. When there was an abundance of opinions about bringing the battleship Iowa to the LA waterfront, for example, Dave's approach was simple: get on a plane and fly up to the Bay Area to see the Iowa operation firsthand. By doing so, Battleship Iowa CEO Jonathan Williams credits Dave as a key reason the Battleship Iowa ultimately came to our waterfront. I could go on much longer, but let me conclude by saying that Dave has made a remarkable difference in the lives of countless individuals, organizations, our commercial waterfront, and the entire maritime industry that is the backbone of this port. On behalf of the Harbor Commission and port staff, we will always be grateful for all that he did, as well as his love and friendship. Before we ask our guests to share their thoughts, we will first hear from my fellow commissioners and our Executive Director, Gene Soroka. I'd like to start with Commissioner Prosy.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming this morning. It's just an honor to be able to speak today and with all of you here. I've been doing a lot of reflection, thinking back to when I first met Dave. I first met him at the Harry Bridges Institute. I was there with Jack Barrich, right when Jack was putting together Bloody Thursday. And, Dave was very welcoming to me. He was very, nice to meet you. We hit it off from that point on. But it wasn't really until I became a commissioner that I got to know the man that was a legend in this town and on the waterfront. But for me, we found that we had a lot in common. Two Pedro boys. He grew up on 8th Street. I grew up on 10th Street. I went to Cabrillo Avenue, Dana, San Pedro High School. He graduated high school the year I was born. And so we just hit it off because, our family, we're sons of immigrants. Our families came here to find a new life and start on the waterfront. And, he stayed with longshoring, and my family started with fishing, and then I went into engineering. But we always felt that common ground based on our upbringing. So I wanted to really just give two couple things, examples of Dave, that I remember. He had a big sense of humor. And for those of you who followed waterfront development, he used to tease me, whether in public or in private, in that scratchy voice, and he'd say, "I make the money and you spend it." And so I would always put my arm around him and we'd laugh. And there was one other occasion that I will always want to have one of those flat bill hats that he wears. And my wife always thought I looked funny in a hat like that. And so we were at a commission meeting in Wilmington, and he comes up to me with one of those gray flat bill hats, and he said, "This is for you, try it on." And I said, my wife thinks I look funny in that hat, right? He said, "That's why I bought it for you." So, and then we had a lot of quiet times. We'd sit together at the Pedro football games on Friday nights. We'd spend at least a whole half of the game just sitting there talking about family, waterfront politics, whatever in football. It was just a special quiet time I had with him. So lately, I've been asking myself a lot, during a lot of things that is coming our way to review and consider as, what would Dave do? What would Dave say? How would he approach that? And so I think about also his passion, and it was just immeasurable, and his voice was his weapon. And so for me, it was when I found out he he had this cancer he's finding it hard to talk. I just thought to myself, man, we all prayed and hoped that he'd get better. But he fought, and he always fought. One other story is, him and I didn't always agree at times. We talk in private. But by the end of the conversation, we'd find common ground, and most of the time he was right. He convinced me that he was right. And there was only a few times where he called me during the day to talk, and it didn't matter the meeting. There's always that one person that says we need to talk, where you drop everything and you really need to listen. Dave was that person. So if he called me and I was in a big meeting, I'd step out because I saw his name on my phone. And because he meant that much to me, to all of us, his word, his passion, his conviction. And so I've been honored to serve with him on this board for the last 5 years. He's taught me in the commission so much, and same with port staff and everybody that surrounds him. He was a giant in the labor and goods movement industry, his knowledge unparalleled, and his loss has left a big void in many of us. But the way we fulfill his legacies, we fill that void with what he taught us. And so I just wanted to thank him publicly, and the last time I saw him, I told him I loved him. I gave him a kiss on the cheek. So, rest in peace, Dave. I miss you.
My sincere condolences to the family of Dave and to the Port family. You can see by the faces here that we're all in mourning. I only knew Dave from my year of service on the commission. So that's all I can go on. I'm loving these pictures because I can see a much bigger man, weight-wise. I could say that for several of people in the picture. And some have gotten bigger, some have gotten smaller. But so I don't have all of that history, but I have a love for this man. I felt a sadness, a loss that, of course, doesn't compare to the family, but from the family that is the Port, that is this small group that you see sitting up here. I apologize, I have my ears are popping. Dave was really the heart of it, and I echo what President Jamie said. He made me feel so welcome, so accepted, and like I had something to bring to this table up here. And he didn't have to do that, but I felt very respected, like my opinion counted. And I think that that's what I got to see in Dave in the work that he did on the commission, is the care, the sincere love for the community, for trying to do what's right, for trying to get the whole picture. It was just with him all the time. And I think he brought that everywhere, and he brought that out in others. And the way he made you feel a part, I got to see pictures of his daughter's wedding. He didn't have to share that with me. I mean, I could just be an acquaintance, but he brought out his phone because he was so proud. It brought so much joy. I got to see pictures of his grandkids on a trip to, I think it was Oxnard beach, and they were playing on the beach, and those are the pictures he shared. And to me, that brings this love of family, that was like the main thing there. Because he could have shown me pictures of some of these other big events where he's going to be remembered for. But what was in his heart, the closest, was his family, and he shared that. And by sharing that with me, I felt like he was bringing me in, and I appreciate that. And so to Dave's family, I just say thank you. Thank you for the gift of sharing Dave with us. He made all of us better for that. And I believe he's resting in peace, and he deserves to be. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. It's a real honor to have you all. I met Dave 6 years ago when I became a member of the Port Commission, and I was honored to my car parked next to him. They had me sit next to him, and And I remember the first time I met Dave, I came to the meeting and he stuck out his hand and he said, "I guess Garcetti wanted a capitalist on the Port Commission." Just so you know, I'm the socialist. And from that beginning, I really grew to love Dave from day one. He brought, he constantly amazed me. And let's talk about some of his accomplishments, and then let's talk a little bit about the miracle of his personality. So in terms of his accomplishments, the Port of Los Angeles' main strategy is to become a hybrid port. We talk about it all the time. We talk about being both a landlord port as well as providing value-added services that drive traffic here. Where does that come from? That was Dave's idea. Gene Soroka is a great CEO and or executive director. We're blessed to have him. How did he initially get introduced to the port? Because he'd been working in the port area. Dave called him on the phone and said, "Look, we need someone like you. Apply." When I first joined the port, Dave kept saying, "Ed, what matters is throughput. We have got to get the gates to run better. We have got to get the traffic to move faster." Over and over and over again, he kept saying that. And at first, I didn't really think that was the issue. You know what? He was right. I was wrong. He transformed how we think about the port business. And this is from a guy, talk about big ideas, big strategic ideas. And this is coming from a guy who didn't have, the fanciest education in the world, right? He learned on the job, on the docks. Let's also talk about him, like what makes him special. If he were sitting next to me, he used to sit next to me and he used to make hilarious comments. Seeing you all in the room today, he would say to me, "Uh-oh, someone's here to scream at us." Dave would brag all the time. He said, in my youth, because he loved the port police. He loved the police. He adored the police. And this is coming from a guy who in his youth got arrested quite a bit. If he saw all of you guys here in his honor, I'm sure he would have turned to me and say, "Uh-oh, Ed, they're probably here to arrest me." Finally, one of the amazing things about Dave is that everybody loved him. Everybody, from all different walks of life. When he stuck out his first hand and said, "So you're the capitalist," that was an invitation to celebrate our different backgrounds and perspectives. He was highlighting our difference in order to highlight our commonality. It was the remarkable thing about him. His love of family. Dave talked about you guys all the time. And true confession, I have a tendency sometimes, every once in a while, to be late to these meetings. Every once in a while. And Dave would give me a bad time. He'd sit there and he'd say, "Why were you late?" And the only answer I could give him that he would accept was if I had a child care issue at home. Because family first. Family first always. We are blessed to have had Dave. I honestly don't know how we are going to go forward without him. We will muddle through. We will do our best. But I want to thank you, his family, for sharing him with us. I know he poured his heart and energy into us here at the port, and we were blessed to have it. I want to thank you, the community, for showering David with love. One of the things he taught me was not only how to live, but also how to die. He died with the love of his community. Throughout this process, he never asked for any sympathy. He never asked for anything. During the whole process, he gave. He gave a speech here when he announced his diagnosis. And the speech was not, "Don't feel sorry for me. What I need you to do is continue to be who you are." Dave was a miracle. We were lucky to have him. Thank you so much for coming.
Good morning. Dave was so proud that during his time on this commission, this port has never been busier, safer, or cleaner than it is today. And he showed that every day in the way he worked with us. Shortly after I started 5 years ago, Eric Karras took Dave and I to Europe to go see all those companies and all those leaders that we wanted more cargo from to bring to this port. So Eric took us on this trip, and we went to 6 countries in 5 days with Dave. Early morning flight, late night hotel check-ins, serious meetings, big people trying to bring more cargo and more work to this port. So we're flying out, and we're running through the Frankfurt airport to try to make a connection to come back home. And I mean, we've got very little time, and we're literally running through the airport. And all of a sudden, the wheels come off his rollerboard. And Eric and I'm brand new. I'm on the job like a month. And Eric, who speaks 5 languages around Europe, looks at me and he's like, well, what are we going to do now? I don't know. He's the vice president of the commission. Oh, what are you going to do now? He turns around and looked at us and says, boys, you passed. We ran this rollerboard into the ground. Let's go buy another one and keep going. Cleaner. He was part of that first committee assigned by Mayor Villaraigosa to work between labor, the environmental community, our local community, business, and everyone else involved that wanted to make this a cleaner and better place to live and work. And that launched him into the opportunity to join this commission as appointed by the mayor and then reappointed by Mayor Garcetti. So we latched on to that belief too. Once again, Eric, Mike, and I took him on a trip to Japan, because there was a company in Japan that was developing the first ever hydrogen fuel cell, zero emissions technology. And David wanted to be a part of that. So we get over there, and again, we're meeting with a bunch of big shots, big conference room, all these executives. Dave opens up the meeting. And he says, well, guys, I wanted to come here, and he talks a little bit about his history and how he got there and what he was doing. And he says, we like Toyota. And that's the way he said it. We like Toyota, and we want you guys to join us. Eric, Mike, and I are just looking, just keep going, man, just keep going. And then safer. His love for the port police is well documented. As members of the ILWU, rank and file all the way up to the leadership, part of that ILWU family was something that he always wanted to see. And he kept working with us. He talked about a concept called community policing. And it's something that we collectively live and breathe every day. It's how we walk out there, how we work with our neighbors, our visitors, those who come here from far-reaching locations. And Dave was always working it, always working it. He was out there in the community at every event, every location. Every time somebody wanted to talk about the port, the broader community, or what we can do, Dave was there to answer those questions and talk about it. So we're out to lunch, and we were going to get a Cuban sandwich one time with Dave, just right up the street here. And he's like, you know what, guys? This is getting real expensive. And we just looked at him. It's like, what do you mean? He's like, used to be, I'd walk out of my house on 17th Street, and somebody would just walk up and say, hey, Dave, let's go to lunch. Somebody would always buy me lunch. And he said, guys, Mike, Gene, he says, once I got on the commission, I couldn't take any lunches. I couldn't take any gifts. I had to pay my own way. But you got to be honest all the time. You got to declare, you got to do all the stuff they teach us when it comes to the ethics of the city. We're just nodding our heads, bobbing head dolls. And he says, but the other thing is, I got to go to the dry cleaners now every 2 weeks. And we looked at him. It's like, yeah, keep going. And he says, because I got to go to the Harbor Commission meeting every 2 weeks, and I got to look sharp. And that costs money, too. But those are the things, and there have been a lot said, a lot written, and there will be a lot more said here this morning and the coming days and weeks as we celebrate Dave's life. And everybody has a little bit something, but that was Dave to us. And all that has been said about family and friendship and port and labor. But I think the best one ever, and I think Norm Tuck, his partner for all the years on the waterfront, will tell you, there was a time where all we talked about was health and safety. And it still is today. That's woven into the DNA of the ILWU and everybody that works on that waterfront. Health and safety is of number one importance. But you got to move cargo. And this is a business with heavy containers and big folks, and we got to move fast and do things. And sometimes equipment gets dinged up a little bit. But that's why we have the best mechanics in the world to fix that equipment and keep getting it going. So I can remember when I was back in the private sector with APL, and there were some conversations with Dave about how we treat our equipment, dinging it up, safety first, all the time. We'd have those conversations on a regular basis. And then all of a sudden one day, Dave was driving the machine and kind of dinged it up again, but it was really close to the water. And everybody's like, oh no, not again, not again. Who's going to go talk to Dave? Who's going to step up? So guess who steps up? I start walking out there, and he just turns around. He looks at me. Man, there's something wrong with the truck. And again, that's the spirit of Dave. So in a little bit, after we hear from all of our friends, colleagues, and family, we're going to make a proposal to this Harbor Commission to rename the roadway south of 22nd Street Dave Arian Way. And this... Over the past weeks and months, just staff, just us guys and ladies, have been trying to figure out ways that we can honor. And this is not just a one-shot deal. This is how we can kickstart having this memory of such a great friend go on forever, for generations to come. And we were talking about all kinds of ideas. Mike DiBernardo pulled me aside and he said, you know what? You can talk about this or that or the other that we were thinking about when it comes to naming rights or memorialization or whatever you want to call it. Mike said, you know what? The best thing we could do is a street, because everybody's going to pass by, everybody's going to see it. But that street was so special to Dave, and we'll talk a little bit more about it before everyone leaves, but it was so special because it went southbound all the way to the outer harbor where Dave's bench is. It goes right past the fruit dock that Dave loved so much. He would travel to South America to bring business of our perishable commodities. And he would campaign for all the work at that fruit dock, because that was real work of all of these cargoes coming in in break bulk fashion, perishables that had to get to market. And that was something that really preserved generation to generation for Dave. So we'll present that in just a little bit. You saw a couple of these pictures, and we went around a lot to these events. Whether it was celebrating with the longshore women and men about breaking records, 3 years in a row, the all-time record for a port in the Western Hemisphere, going out thanking people, going to other events, Cars and Stripes, and everything we did, labor walks. And Don Haynes put together something that we want to share with you. And Don started off as a student worker and went with Dave to almost every one of these events. As a videographer, as a partner, advising how we could do things, what we could do to really shine a bright light on this great port. So Don and Philip Sandfield, who heads up media, put something together that I think you'll all enjoy. And just shortly thereafter, Chief Tom Gazy, head of Public Service and Emergency Management, would like to do the honor of presenting a very special gift to the family on behalf of the Harbor Department. So Patrick, if you would you roll the tape, please?
Well, you know, when I started on the waterfront in 1964, there was very few containers, and the transition has been amazing, you know, and if you look around the harbor, you'll see smaller ships that carry 2,000, 3,000, and now we've got 20,000 TEU container ships, and as a result of that, you know, we're now moving more containers than any other port in the country, And I just think that it's important for us to see not only the question of movement of cargo, but what does it do for the community to make a difference in the lives of each and every person that lives in this community. Well, I think the Port of LA, has a dual responsibility. One, to, maximize our profits, off what we make, particularly off the container operations or terminals. But at the same time, we have a social responsibility to the community. And so much of everything in terms of what the community looks at is not these big projects, but projects like this. The thing that makes all this possible, when you look out at these cranes that are working, and you count the number of cranes working, and you see 50 or 60 cranes working, that's money coming into the port. And that's what makes events like this possible. People are recognizing the port now for the great work that it's done. And now when we look at the commercial side and the development of the San Pedro market, we see the brewery, we see Crafted, we see these things that are changing the character of this area. And we made a contribution that really enhances who we are as a port. Well, it's always good to be back in my home here, Local 13. And tonight we're making the rounds because last year, you guys, the women and men in this hall in 63 and 94, moved 9.4 million containers, the largest number in the history of this port.
And the greatest thing I learned about the ILWU is they give you the right to be in the fight. It's the most democratic union. And, the things that I've learned is, in life, if you can be part of one thing that's special, it really gives you meaning in life. And I've been part of something that's been so special to us, to this community, to this country, and to the world.
Justine, Sean, Michael, Councilman, Lorraine, Roxy, Jaden, Rose, Jacob, Destin, Anika, and Kira. We join you in significant sorrow over the loss of a friend, a mentor, one that was a champion for the Port of Los Angeles, but specifically had a soft place in his heart for public safety, for Port Police and the Pilot Service, all ILWU membership. His influence will never be forgotten. His kindness, his thoughtfulness, his passion. It mattered not of your status. He made time for all of us at all levels of the organization, as he did throughout the community. And he will always be remembered for and will always be the standard for community policing and how we treat one another and how we move forward. He and Supervisor Hahn championed a charter amendment to ensure and secure the autonomy of the Los Angeles Port Police, to ensure our place into the future, along with a place of status and honor among our allied agencies, which will never be forgotten and we'll always be, as police officers, thankful for. I asked Sergeant Glenn Tuardi to join me here next to me today because he was a close, dear friend of David's. Glenn is holding an American flag that was authorized to be lowered to half-staff by the Executive Director, Gene Sroak, on January 2nd, along with the state flag and the city flag. The American flag represents the sacrifices and the freedoms that we enjoy as Americans, and it represents the sacrifices that David made in his life for all of us. The state flag represents the most populous state in the United States and the most progressive state in the United States, and it's reminiscent of David's life. Lastly, and probably of great importance, is the city flag, bearing the city seal and the authority of the Port of Los Angeles to operate under the Tidelands Trust Act. But it represents David's community, his life, where he grew up, and it represents the greatest port in the United States and the greatest labor force that serves this port. And it is endearingly representative of his life. The American flag will be presented to you today, having been lowered on January 2nd, the state flag in like manner with the city flag on January 27th when we join you for the final memorial. We are grateful for what your family has done for us. He will never be forgotten. Thank you for being with us this morning.
It's not often that a community of people get the privilege to share life on this earth with a fighter like Dave. I want to recognize his family as well. Sean, my brother Mike Bonin, who's my seatmate on the LA City Council, Justine, Ethan, his sister, a number of his dear friends. As we all know, Dave was very outspoken. He was direct, he was focused, he was real, as evidenced in the photos before us, and he will always remain a legend. Most of us here are very familiar with Dave's resume. As you heard, he did right for his family. And sitting next to my colleague Mike Bonin, Mike always shared with me how Dave loved his kids and his grandkids to the point where I know his beloved Jacob, he would take the time to drive to Venice, to the west side, to spend time with him. And Mike always would remind me of when he's coming to Pedro because Jacob would be with Grandpapa. But what I loved most about Dave, he never accepted any BS. One of my favorite memories happened in this room here when, as the vice president of the commission, Dave, after listening to public comment, he couldn't contain himself. And had to reply with, "You're full of shit, man. You want to fight? You got one." Clearly, he couldn't hold anything back. And that's why we are all here, because we loved him so. Passing of our friend has awakened and reinvigorated a deeper sense of justice and solidarity within me. Not only me, but within leaders of this city. Dave's passing is a constant reminder to us all that we need to be a better friend to labor and to fight harder and longer to protect workers' rights. His loss would be a significant loss to this port. His wealth of knowledge, his love for community was unmatched. So I want to recognize and thank the port for leaving a permanent mark with the renaming of Minor Street to Dave Arian Way. We appreciate that. We support it. And on Tuesday, when the Los Angeles City Council reconvenes, I will join my brother, Councilmember Mike Bonin, and we will all adjourn in memory of Dave Arian and pay tribute to the love and sacrifice that he had for the city of Los Angeles. May he rest in peace, and may the family just know that we are here for you, we love you, and he will never be forgotten. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Madam President, members of this very important commission in the city of Los Angeles, thank you for doing this this morning. We've all struggled with this situation since Dave was diagnosed. And thank you for doing this today. I think we all needed to come together again and hear good stories and laugh about our dear friend Dave. So thank you for inviting me to say a few words. I'm going to try to get through it. It's clear that this commission, obviously, you lost a colleague. And it was very touching to hear each of you talk about your special relationship with Dave. This community, boy, we lost an incredible leader and part of our history part of who we are. We lost with Dave, and so many of us lost a dear, dear close friend and the family. You lost your brother, your father, your grandfather. I think all of us have thought so much about our own lives, about what matters. And, we're only given so many years on this earth. I think he was given too little. I think he was taken too soon. But I think for all of us, we hope that we're making the most of the years that we've been given. And Dave lived a remarkable, full life. I had the privilege of working alongside Dave for many years, and I witnessed him pouring his heart and his soul into the ILWU, into his brothers and sisters on the docks, and into this community. And in the face of struggle and injustice, Dave always saw the opportunity for progress. He was an organizer at heart, and he knew that one man could only accomplish so much, but the power of people united is what made the huge differences in this world. And that was limitless. The power of the people was limitless. And he got all of us to get that, to understand that, and to move with him in that. Yesterday's dock workers will certainly thank Harry Bridges, but today's dock workers will thank Dave Arian. It's because of him that the working conditions and the benefits are enjoyed by the current workers on our docks. And Dave took an interest in my own son and helped him along the way. Now he is a full-fledged member of ILWU. He's a mechanic. So I always said, this automation stuff, it's all going to break down. We need good mechanics to fix it. And that's what Danny's doing. He fought for the men and women of our ports, who are the backbone of our goods movement industry in this country. But he wasn't just ours. I think that's, we kind of thought he was a Pedro boy. He was ours. He was international. And I began to understand that when I went to Congress. And I understood that every time he went to Hawaii and he ran into folks who were dock workers in Hawaii. When I went to the Panama Canal on an official congressional delegation, the port pilots there absolutely knew Dave. And it was because of him that they became organized. And it was because of Dave's interest in spreading this incredible message about why ports matter to people, why they matter to our economy, to jobs, to security, that he was the inspiration and the guidance for me to start something in Congress which had never been done before in the history of Congress, was to begin this Port Caucus, where, I think it's the last time Republicans and Democrats came together on anything, but we had this great Port Caucus that kept giving that message, that gospel, about why ports matter in every single congressional district. And it was his inspiration to me, and it was his guidance, and it was his push, as only Dave can do, to make you keep doing better. But with all that, he, as so many have said, he loved his family so much. Boy, and Justine and Sean, boy, it's. I know it's hard to have a dad who's larger than life. I know I had one. But I know you know this. He was so proud of both of you. He was so proud of both of you and what you had become and the legacy that both of you are still leaving. And he loved his grandkids, and it always was amazing to me that he had regular grandchild hours. I mean, you guys depended on him for certain days of the week, and he actually watched his grandkids. And that was a beautiful thing to see. And Lorraine, he was such a good brother, and you were such a good sister to him until the very end, and you were lucky to have each other. His life is worth living. His life was worth living. His life is worth celebrating. I'm glad we're doing it today. This Tuesday, I also had my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors. We had a moment where we adjourned the County Board of Supervisors meeting in Dave's memory and honor. It's hard for me to face the fact that his time with us is over. His legacy is not. And, there's some organizing to do in heaven, and I'm sure Dave is already on it. But let's recommit ourselves to our friends, to our family, and to the struggle that continues to happen every day with men and women who are working on our docks here and across the country. Thank you.
First, I would like to add my condolences to the family on the passing of this incredible person. Nothing will ever replace him, but I know you will always hold him in your hearts. When I first met him, when I was asked to serve on this board, and he comes up to me and points his finger at me, and he says, Cindy Misakowski did a great job of keeping this board together. And I thought, oh, good, good. I know what my assignment is, and Dave, I hope that you will agree that I fulfilled it. No one knew more about this port, this community, this type of work than Dave Arian. We have all learned so much from him, and we'll always remember that. His love for family and community and the well-being of our nation was just unparalleled. His commitment to the underrepresented of our nation was remarkable to see every day. I can't remember a time when he wasn't in the building. And I would say, well, where is Dave? Well, no, he's over here. No, he's over there. And I'm thinking, well, there's only one, so let's find out where Dave Arian is. But it's going to be hard to imagine this building without Dave roaming it. So I suspect his spirit will be roaming it. So, keep that in mind as you go about your daily life. Many people have said and will in the coming days say, and should, wonderful things about Dave Arian. But the question I have for all of us is, what will we now do to honor who Dave Arian was? Because that is all that matters in the end. And the only other thing I will say is, this man lived a joyful life. And he is the only fellow commissioner that I ever had to bang the gavel on. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It really, although a sad occasion, it's really good to be back here because all I feel in this room right now is love, honor, and just a mountain of cherishing who this man was. And thank you to the family and his friends and all of you, his colleagues, who shared him with us in the world. I'm going to use a word that he would probably be scornful of. I'm going to use the word legacy. But this man, this is his legacy. You are his legacy. A couple of the things that have already been talked about, I just want to reiterate it because I think they are so important. Before this commission and the city passed the Clean Air Action Plan, Dave was put on a task force to say, let's work together. And he said, let's work together with our sister port, the Port of Long Beach. I had come from the city of Los Angeles where the Port of Long Beach was the enemy. We did not work together. It was always competition, always who can do better, who can do more, who can steal which container shipping company. But Dave saw this as one big fellowship, and he was on that joint task force. And after that Clean Air Action Plan passed, and it's important because of the work he put into it, but it's important, and when you use the word legacy, that's what it's about. For generations, the air will be clean in and around this port. That wasn't always the case. That is a long-term gift and commitment that Dave helped initiate and start. We see these pictures, and I'm reminded that every single time I was here, and on our commission agenda, there would be an announcement that this event is happening, or we'd like a commissioner to go to that event, or there's something else, or we have a commission, we have a trip, and we'd like a commission member to go. Dave was always the first to volunteer, and these are just a few of the thousands of pictures of Dave being around. One of the things, I think when Jean was talking about going on these foreign trips, particularly when you're meeting with heads of companies throughout the world, Dave not only did that, but Dave wanted to go on the docks and meet not with the heads of the company, but the folks doing the work. And the reason he went, not just because of the prestige, but he wanted to learn. I can't think of another person of my generation who isn't a little bit set in their ways and remembering the way we did things and the way we're supposed to do things. And Dave was one of the youngest in his mind and in his heart about how we should do things. Maybe it was good the way we did them in the past, and maybe he learned a lot, and maybe he contributed a lot, but he knew change was coming, and we had to be ahead of the game. And every time he was at every place, whether it was the Panama Canal or South America, or particularly in Asia and in Europe, he would say, what's new? What are they doing? What ought we to be doing? What can we learn? How can we learn? And he brought that back to all of us. And I just believe that was sort of an immense value that is going to be sorely lost here. And for those who are on the commissioner, every once in a while you'll get, at the end of the meeting, an envelope on the desk or a piece of paper, sometimes anonymous. And it will be from some person here in the port, either a staff worker, a person who works on the docks, who felt disenfranchised, didn't know where to turn. And they would leave a letter on the desk of the commission and say, I'd like you to look into this. Dave would follow up on each and every one of those. He'd meet with that person, he'd find out who wrote the letter, and he'd want to get to the bottom of it. There was nothing in this organization or this system or this structure that was too unimportant for him to bother to look at. He was the light, and we all were attracted to it. It showed us the way, and I dare say it will show us the way for a long time in the future. So I'm really honored to be here. God bless Dave Arian, his family, and all of his colleagues here at the port. Thank you.
I have the distinction of actually not having served with Dave. I left the commission at the same time as ILWU member Joe Radisich, and Joe and I left, and Dave Arian came on board with Robin Kramer. But when I first was named to the Harbor Commission, I knew nothing. I knew less than nothing. I was appointed because of my environmental experience. And for about the first 5 months, about once a week, sometimes more, people would say, have you met Dave Arian? Do you know Dave Arian, ILWU? Have you met with him yet? And I didn't know who he was. And finally, I approached one of the staff members and I said, everybody keeps telling me I need to meet with Dave Arian. Who is that? And they started to explain, oh, he's the health and safety officer for ILWU. And Joe Radisich, the ILWU member, said, are you talking about Dave Arian? I said, yeah. And he said, oh, he's much more than that. And he lit into us. He was like, he is a giant out there. You guys, if you don't know him already, I will introduce you. Personally, he went off on us because for Joe and for all the folks at ILWU, Dave was their guy. He was their president. He was their leader. He was their heart. And I got to meet Dave finally at one of these advisory group meetings for the Clean Air Action Plan that was in process. These advisory group meetings were not pleasant for those of you, some of you who participated. They were very contentious. There was diversity of stakeholders there. I attended a meeting. Everyone said, oh, they behaved because you were there, Commissioner. But it was ugly. There were some curse words flying. There were lots of differences of opinion. And I noticed that Dave was just very quietly sitting, listening and listening. We finally got to the last 10 minutes of the meeting, and he asked to speak. And that's when I understood who Dave Arian was, because he brought the depth and breadth of his knowledge of the port, of San Pedro, of Wilmington, of the entire port community to his comments, and basically chastised the group for acting like a bunch of foolish children, which is what I wanted to say, but I couldn't. And he also brought forward some ideas that had not been heard and had not been listened to by other folks, and made everybody listen. And I thought to myself, okay, I get it. He is a giant, and he knows what he's doing. And that's when I understood for the first time as the vice president of the Harbor Commission that I was basically just keeping the seat warm until Dave was able to step up and take his rightful role on this body. I never thought I would be here. When I understood that he was ill through my friendship with Sean, I was first of all furious that this was happening to him, but I also thought, well, there's no way he'll get past this. He's Dave. He's so vital and strong and full of energy and love and passion. There's no way cancer will take him. And I'm still pissed off that it did, because I think that he still had a lot more to do. But the thing I'll always remember, and I apologize for being alliterative, but Dave brought a warm welcome and wit and wisdom to everyone he met, to everything he did. That's not to say he didn't also move with anger and passion and strong convictions. But I always remember the warmth and the laughter when I did run into him, and the jokes he would tell about being on the board that sometimes only former commissioners can understand. I want to thank the port for offering me this opportunity to share with you all. I want to offer my deepest condolences to Sean, who I've worked with in other worlds, to the entire Arian family, who I don't know very well. May he rest in peace and in power. Thank you.
I'm Bonnie Lowenthal, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak in remembrance of Dave Arian, a legend, a leader like none other, and a role model in every aspect of his life, and as Ed said, a role model in his death as well. As Vice President of the Board of Harbor Commissioners, I'm here to convey my board's condolences to you, our sister Harbor Commission, our neighbor port, to the entire harbor community, and certainly to the family of Dave Arian. I'm aware of the deep loss that this port and Dave's fellow longshore workers and the whole of the harbor community is feeling right now. I feel that loss as well. It's very personal for me. What a delight it always was to have Dave Arian on the commission of our neighbor port. Such a great man, always speaking up for those who needed support, always there to help workers and businesses and the community. He is missed. I miss him now. I'll miss marching with him, and I'll miss calling him for advice. He spoke so clearly and so strongly for the interests of this harbor and for all issues that were related to social and economic justice. After all, as a member and leader in the ILWU, no one had a better understanding of this harbor and those issues. But it was always about more than just how much he knew. It was about how much he cared. As someone previously said, he treated everyone with the same respect, regardless of their status. He served this harbor with an energy and wisdom that helped these ports to prosper and grow and become better neighbors. I have no doubt that your board and your port will carry on. I know you will lead and continue to follow Dave Arian's great heart, and I thank you for that. My sympathies and my board's sympathies go out to Mr. Arian's family and all the members of the harbor community. We will be adjourning our commission
in memory of Dave this coming Monday. And I ask you, what would Dave say? What would Dave say? He would say, don't worry about me. Stay the course. Fight for labor. Fight for workers. Fight for economic and social justice. Thank you so much.
I also appreciate Vice President Lowenthal's words on behalf of our commission. We're all thinking about Dave and the tragedy of missing him. But I would like to say, and I'll keep this brief, I've been on the commission for 4 years. I had the opportunity to work with Dave in the subcommittee for the Clean Air Action Plan that we had passed in 2015, I think, or last year, I'm not sure. I appreciated so much the intellect and the analysis and the technical expertise and history that he brought to that process. When I first met him, I think Commissioner Renwick, you mentioned how you felt like you had known him. I felt like I had known him for decades, and consequently, I felt totally comfortable working with him because he was honest, he had the highest integrity, he was totally transparent in the work that he did. He had a passion for the topic. He helped us to break down the complexities, and I think that helped us come to better recommendations for the group. He has compassion, had compassion for everybody who's a constituent, whether it was labor, people in the community, the various port staffs. He always took the problems and reminded us that there was a human element to each recommendation that we made, and that we had to consider that just as much as we considered anything else in what we did. He was very, very kind, I think, a very, very nice man. He cared about his family. I've had the pleasure to work with Sean. I know that the family has to be the best because you can't have a father, a husband, a brother like that without being able to carry on those kinds of characteristics. And I do believe that his legacy is going to be something that we're all going to appreciate. And I think ultimately, I think he was a great humanist. I could tell that from the very beginning. He had a big heart. He was a big personality. And he cared so much about the port, both ports, and he cared about our joint responsibility to our communities and our stakeholders. So my heart goes out to all of you. Thank you very much for letting me say a few words. I, too, will miss him, and I wish I would have known him decades like some of you have. Thank you.
Thank you. My condolences to the Arian family. First of all, I'm not only have witnessed the pictures, viewing the pictures that you are seeing, but the video that the commission put together. And I think clearly everything has been said about Dave. And whether it's words, whether it's pictures, whether it's video, we're talking about a person who was just such a large person, not only in terms of perspective, his legacy, the people that he mentored, including myself, over the many years. And earlier when we were chatting, some of us, and before the meeting started, or the formal meeting, I observed Norm's Pendleton. And, you know, I know Dave was known to wear Hawaiian shirts, and this place that he had in Hawaii in his later years. But in his early years, you do see some pictures where he's wearing that Pendleton. And I met Dave in 2003 when I was first appointed to the Harbor Commission at the Port of Long Beach by then Mayor Beverly O'Neill. I had heard of Dave Arian, but I never really met him. Well, sure enough, after being appointed, I think we both had a mutual interest of meeting each other. And I remember the Pendleton. So I remember saying, you know, I grew up in Gardena, not too far from here. And I said, the last time I wore a Pendleton, I was in high school, you know. And I said to Norm, you know, I'm committed to go to Portland, and I'm going to buy a Pendleton. And when I wear that shirt, I'm going to wear Dave Arian. Because again, this was a man that, yes, he spoke on behalf of the working class. He spoke on behalf of labor. But this is a man that you've heard, as you've heard today, he spoke on behalf of the San Pedro Bay ports. He transcended Los Angeles, San Pedro, incorporated Long Beach. And when he met me, he talked about his vision of the port complex. And he invited me, he said, Mario, I'd like you to come over and let me introduce you to the Harry Bridges Institute. And prior to that, my recollection was the Port of Long Beach had not been involved in the Harry Bridges Institute. And when she introduced me to the Institute, thereafter the Port of Long Beach became a sponsor. And he was very happy that Long Beach was now partaking in what he thought and is a big event to remind us all that this port complex is about money, is about revenue, is about our Asian partners, our global partners, but it's also to remind us that it's a port complex that should benefit the many, not just a few. And that's what Dave stood for. And you see his often civic involvements, whether related to the port or related to other endeavors. We would meet often in Long Beach. And I remember one time he said, those of you who know me, my drink of choice is coffee. He says, hey, Mario, let's have coffee. And then he suggested Long Beach as a venue. And that was good for me. I said, but I'm thinking, why do you want to meet in Long Beach? I'll go to San Pedro or meet you in downtown Long Beach. But many of you may not know that Dave was also a student of yoga. And he took a yoga class in Long Beach. So we would meet in 2nd Street. And I thought that was good for me because when we sat down and had our coffee, at least he had just come from a centering experience. So I was the beneficiary of talking to someone who had already gone through his yoga routine, and we were ready to talk in a very calm manner about what we needed to do. So I think as I conclude my conversations here, I wanted to emphasize that, yes, we're speaking about a man who's not just a labor leader or was a labor leader. He was a man of worldwide views, dedicated to his family. But one of the things that Cindy mentioned that I think is also important, that when he first met me and throughout our years of friendship, he always talked about the port complex. It wasn't about Long Beach. It wasn't about Los Angeles. It was about coming together to really understand that this maritime, this port complex who has served this community well, who has served this region well, was also understanding that there's a lot of competition out there. And as you heard, Dave was a man about coalitions, about being united. And I think with that, I will carry on his mindset. And yeah, this guy knew about operations and how to run the port. And in fact, the last thing I'll say is, a lot of times we talk about terminal operations. Yes, we're a landlord, but as Gene will attest, we're not just a landlord that signs a lease. We're landlords that want to make things happen. And I always, in thinking right now, in listening to the commentary, I always thought, what would it be if Dave Arian would have ran a terminal here? I could guarantee you we would have had the most productive terminal ever. And then we incorporate the Arian mindset going forward. I'm not too worried about our competition. Thank you so much, Portobello.
Thank you.
Commission President, Commissioners, I'm here today on behalf of Mayor Eric Garcetti to join all of you, port staff, the elected officials, everyone in the public, and Dave's family, as we pay tribute to a truly great man. The mayor has said that our city and our world are better places because of Dave's extraordinary career and because of his deep, deep humanity. It is very moving to be here today in this room to hear the memories of so many of you. who over the years have personally felt that deep humanity. I only wish that Dave could be here to kind of sum it all up for us at the end of this commission meeting, because over the years, that's what he always did. After a long discussion over a particularly contentious issue, Dave had the ability, like no other, to sum up why the commission was voting a certain way, why it had to be so. You always knew in those decisions that Dave made them in a way because he cared so deeply about what those actions would mean for the people here at the port and beyond. He was inspiring because he made decisions with logic, with heart, and the deepest understanding of anybody of this port and its people. And he knew that things done at this port could and did change the world. He knew that things like supply chain optimization and the Cleaner Action Plan were things we had to do here, and he knew that sooner or later everyone else was going to do them. But we were pioneering them here in this port complex. Dave could certainly be intense in all the best ways, but in person, Dave was really disarming. It helped he never wore ties. He was nice to everyone. He had a great sense of humor, and he respected everybody who had something to say. Often when you ran into him in this building, particularly on a non-commissioned day, and you kind of saw him from a distance, he was having a great time. He had a relaxed air of someone who was just retired, visiting an old workplace, visiting people. But once he started talking about the issue of the day, you could see how deeply engaged he was, how serious a person he was, and how much this port mattered to him, and how much all the people from the longshoremen to the port staff, really to kids going to the Boys and Girls Club, everybody was impacted by this place, how much they mattered to him. The mayor will miss him, we'll all miss him very much, and we'll continue to be inspired by him. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity the Congressman wanted me to share these words with you. I am proud and honored to join so many others in celebrating the life of a great American, Dave Arian. We all know about Dave, the union leader, a man carrying on the footsteps of Harry Bridges. We also know Dave, the port commissioner, a man who fought for workers as he was laying out a vision for the future of our ports. I would like to add Dave, the thinker and mentor, who challenged not only me, but many of us to rethink our positions, learn to defend them, and never give in when we know we are right. I will miss Dave dearly. I also want to let you know that the Congressman is going to be introducing a congressional record entry on memory of Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm here on behalf of the Congresswoman, and she wanted me to share a few words. Good morning, members of the Los Angeles City Council, Los Angeles Harbor Board of Commissioners, representatives of elected offices, and to the family of the late Commissioner David Arian. I want to be here this morning, but I'm in Washington, D.C., taking votes today to reopen the government. I extend my deepest sympathy and condolences to the family of Commissioner David Arian, the Harbor Board of Commissioners, and the Port of Los Angeles family. I met Dave a few years ago as a campaign for Congress. He was always friendly, gracious, gave me advice, and advocated to improve the quality of life in our community. I respected Dave and his work in our community, from serving as a commissioner to his tireless work as an active and impactful member of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, ILWU. Since my family has a tradition of ILWU workers, I consider Dave part of my ILWU family. Speaking of family, Commissioner Arian's greatest achievement was his family, for whom he was the patriarch, voice of reason, and encouragement. Our thoughts and prayers are with his sons, Sean and Mike, his daughter, Justine, his grandchildren, Anika, Kira, Jacob, Jaden, Destin, his sister, Lorraine, his ex-wife and close friend, Roxanne, and dozens of nieces, nephews, cousins-in-laws, and extended family members. I will miss Dave, his smile, his positive energy, advice, and his community activism. And in closing, I expressed my support for the proposal to rename Minor Street in his honor. We would do well to honor his memory and further cement his legacy by letting those principles that guided Dave's lives guide our way forward. May Commissioner David Arian rest in peace. Thank you.
Good morning, Harbor Commissioners and member of the public. My name is Sarah Patterson, and I'm here today on behalf of Assemblymember Patrick O'Donnell. The Assembly member unfortunately could not be here today, but wanted to express his respect and admiration for Dave, someone he frequently called a class act leader and an example to all. Not only was Dave a leader in his work, but a leader in his community, for justice, and for his family. And on January 14th, the California State Assembly will adjourn in honor of Dave's life. May we all aspire to live and work as he did. Thank you.
Good morning, Board Commissioners and the public. Assemblymember Gibson could not be here today, but he does send me with a few words on his behalf. Dave was a fighter, whether it was standing alongside workers or organizing for his brothers and sisters in arms. He was on the front lines, fighting when others could not. Commissioner Arian never lost sight of his roots. He reminded me of that not just through his words, but his actions. We will miss him, Dave, and all that he stood for. My wife and I stand with Arian, the Arian family during these challenging times. May he rest in peace and in power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Lee and Commission members. I'm here on behalf of State Senator Steve Bradford. He wanted to offer his most sincere condolences to the family, as well as the ILWU family and the Harbor community family as a whole. It's a little intimidating when you're here to share in the memory of a giant of our community. But Senator Bradford would just like to put forward the following: humbly extending his deepest sympathy on the passing of a beloved community treasure. Mr. Arian dedicated his life to improving the lives of our working men and women. His service to the Harbor Commission and the ILWU are just a few examples of his commitment to service. His contributions to social and economic justice provide a model to be emulated. He can never be replaced, and he will be sorely missed by all. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Madam President, Commissioners, my brothers and sisters out there. David Arian, Alan David Arian. We had a running joke. ADA, I called him ADD. Passionate, strong-willed, outspoken, had 1,000 ideas and 1,000,000 ways to delegate other people how to institute those ideas. One of the first major conversations I had with David Arian was 40 years ago. I was a young man, had just gotten my license, working on the boats for Catalina Cruises, and he came up to me and he told me we were going to have a boat tour on board the Catalina boat, 500 passenger vessel. He says, you're going to be the captain. We're going to get a crew, all union, of course. And we're going to take a bunch of students around the harbor and show them the harbor. Great. He says, you're going to volunteer, you're going to get your crew to volunteer, and you're going to get your company to donate the boat. That was the epitome of Dave Arian. And we did it. And it was the first boat tour we did, and I think they've been hundreds since, and thousands of students have come through this harbor and seen this port. Mario, both Long Beach and LA, we included Long Beach, through the years. And that was one of Dave's visions. And Dave had a lot of visions over the years. In the ILW, Dave was an icon. I'm not going to go into detail about all the things that Dave did for the ILW, but from the time he was a very, very young man, it was very evident to Dave that social justice, union involvement, community involvement was paramount in Dave's life. That's what he stood for. He loved his family dearly. He loved his children dearly. One of the most important days of Dave's life was when Justine became a member of the ILWU. He loved Sean, and he especially loved his grandkids. And as you heard today, in his retirement, the only time that you couldn't get Dave Arian to do anything is on days when he had to babysit. And he took it very seriously. And when it was his day to babysit, you couldn't get a hold of him. And if you did get a hold of him, you would hear the kids in the background, or they'd be splashing in the pool, and he'd tell you, I'll get back to you. I remember one of the first times he told me that Mayor Villagrosa was considering him to be a harbor commissioner. And I said to him, does he know your background? And Dave laughed in his Dave way, and he said, who gives a shit, you know? But having Dave sitting there, being from labor, being from San Pedro, being a union member, taking nothing away from you that are sitting there, he was the most important person that sat there. The reason that this port does the amount of work that they do now, one of the reasons that they came back from the 2009 crisis that we experienced, I think, is because of David Arian. He had a vision. He saw it through. And he helped this port staff, and he helped everybody here realize that vision. He was a layman. He was born and raised in the docks. He grew up here. He swam here. He worked here. His blood and sweat are on the docks here. And everything that he stood for is evidenced by everybody who comes after him. Like Janice Hahn said, a lot of the old leaders in the ILW and a lot of the workers in the ILW will look up to Harry Bridges. A lot of the new workers in the ILW will look up to David Arian. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the staff here. You guys up there, you guys down here, Gene, Mike, he loved you. He really, really did. Amber, Julie, Teresa, Stephen, everybody. He really, really loved you. And of course, my ILW brothers back there, Chief Gazy, thank you.
My condolences to the Arian family. I've known Dave for about 35 years. A lot of fights. More bad, but towards the end, good and great. Dave educated me on certain things in life, probably from about 2005, as he changed my views. Dave was a union man, but he was truly a family man. And I will tell you that. When I took office my second term around, I said, hey, we got to have a meeting. He said, he can't, okay. So I gave him the date. He goes, nah, I got to call a reap on you. What? I go, hey, we got to talk. He says, no, because I have to go with Justine and my grandkids. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm out in Seal Beach, and who do I see out there pushing a cart? And my wife was with me. I was there to see Edward Jones, and I kind of laughed about it. And I told him later on, I go, hey, man, you didn't lie to me. It was true. So I knew he was a family man. In politics, Dave was ruthless. If you knew him, he was ruthless. But the one thing he did, family was off hands. Brothers, sisters, wives. So I'd always kept that. I tried to get as bad as he did. And I mean, that bad is good. But David never brought the family in. And I like that. It's good. Family's off hands. And we still try to preach that. And if you do it in the ILWU, I kind of belittle you for doing that, for anybody that does that. Dave didn't do that. My first thing with Dave in 85 is I started working about 79 down here on the docks. But in 85, he shut the port down because we had too many deaths. And that was like my first, wow, shock that we could do that. I didn't know it, and he took it serious. He really did. We walked up down, remember going down on the port and walking. And, my dad's there too. And my dad, man, I don't know this guy. He says, nah, he's okay. He says, his dad's Honest Lou. Honest Lou. I like the name. He goes, a lot of people liked him. So, it was an education at that time. And here, I was a new member in there. But we sat on opposites just because it was Dave. just because it was Dave. I wanted to be opposite of him. He had his beliefs, I had my beliefs. But as we go through life, we understand I was fighting for my cause and he's fighting for his cause. But we always came together, no matter what it was. He'd yell at me and I'd yell at him. And I might call him, hey man, you're a socialist. He says, yeah, that's okay, but let me educate you. He'd start talking, I'm done with you. Because David could go on. David could go on and he'd educate you. And that was him. I can go on and on here. A couple more things just real quick. It was hilarious to hear everybody come up here and try to repeat David Arian's voice. Man, I've heard that in the hall. I mean, I used to do it myself too. I'm not going to do it. But David was different. But he was a union man, a humanitarian. Anybody needed help in the world, not just here, in the world, David's there. Let me help. And he did. And the last thing is that, as an ILW member, myself, my brothers and sisters, we're all threads within the ILW banner. David is one of the 3 golden stripes on the banner, along with Harry Bridges, Jimmy Herman, and now Dave. And it will always stand there. So when you see the gold in our banner, that's Dave. He sits with Harry and Jimmy. So to your family, know that your dad will always be there with us. Thank you.
So I'll do my best not to cry. I will. Dave, it was to me and is to me and will never change a mentor, a beloved friend, and a role model. There's no one in this world that could fill those shoes. And I say that because he's an icon. He is a leader. Because of Dave, I am who I am today. Dave has known me since a baby. Dave has been there as a guardian angel. When I came into the union, you guys talked a little bit about Pendletons. Dave would be in the hall. He could get away with wearing shorts and a Pendleton. We're most big-time guys, and we see them. They got Pendletons, and they're hardcore. But Dave, nobody messed with him. And I found myself wearing shorts and Pendletons. I found myself getting involved. I found myself following the footsteps of a giant. There's certain people that I look up to in this world, and there's not athletes, but people like Harry Bridges, Martin Luther King, Cesar Chavez, and Dave Arian. I will forever educate the union, the membership, the same way he did for me. I will increase the membership. Because of Dave, I am registered today. In 2004, when we were fighting for registration and nobody wanted to bring people in, Dave said, I want 2,000 of these people in. Because he understood it was his job as a union man, as a leader, to make the lives of others better or equal to him. And if I could do anything in this lifetime, is be a quarter of that man. I pledge I will continue to do his fight, for he has done it for me. I've sat with Dave on his bench and looked at the ocean. I've had coffee with Dave. I have texts with Dave before he got sick, when he told me he was sick. That some things I will never erase. To the family, I can't say how blessed you were. I can't say how blessed I am for that man to be part of my life. And with all that being said, what he believed in was what I feel every person in this world should believe in, is everybody have an opportunity to have a good life, to support their family, to be able to be with their grandkids to the very end. And I hope that everybody here today takes a piece of that and educates somebody, because that's all Dave would ever want, is you to reach out to one person. May he rest in peace, power, and thank you for everything he's done. Dave, I love you with all my heart. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the Harbor Commission Board, staff, and my ILWU brothers and sisters. We would especially like to express our deepest condolences to the Arian family. We love all of you so much. I am here actually wearing two hats. I am here on behalf of the Long Beach Community College District Board of Trustees, of which I am currently vice president. And on behalf of my board, I would like to express our deepest, most sincerest condolences to the Port of Los Angeles. Dave Arian has been a strong supporter of education his entire life. He believed in community college education. He served both the Los Angeles and the Long Beach communities as an advocate for career technical education training, especially as it pertained to the ports. And he was someone that I called regularly on a professional level to ask for direction. The ILWU is very fortunate to have a program with the Port of Long Beach that trains our current ILWU members as mechanics. And Dave and I talked about doing that with the Port of LA. And I'm really sorry that that will not come to pass in his lifetime, because he was a visionary and that was one of his goals, is to make sure that we included education at the port level with our dock workers. So on behalf of the Community College Board in Long Beach, I would just like to ask that you would please take his vision to the next level and include education into whatever efforts that you are working on, so that we have more opportunities to improve our workforce. On a personal level, I'm here, currently Health Benefits Officer of Local 13, a position that I consulted with Dave regularly on if it was something that I should pursue. And I'm also here as a friend. And I met Dave when I was starting out as a casual. I was a nobody. I have no family on the waterfront. My husband does, but I don't. And if you were to ask my family which way is the waterfront, they wouldn't know which way to point. Some of my relatives think I surf because I work, on the docks. They don't know what I do. And I am one of Dave's proteges. He took me under his wing. He educated me. He nurtured me. He advised me. And prior to his retirement, Dave called and asked me if I would help him write a book. He said that it was important to him to memorialize his experiences on the docks, and it was important for him to share that and impart that upon our rank and filers coming through the union. And I said, absolutely, no problem. Go ahead and draft it. I'll proofread it for you. Dave said, no, you're going to write it. Dave, I don't know anything. I don't know. I wouldn't know what to say. He says, don't worry, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to tell you what to write. For 2 years, I would come home and open my mailbox and find napkins, paper towels, the backs of envelopes. God, I hope none of it was toilet paper. But I found numerous notes in his handwriting with catchphrases and words and years and dates and locations and people. And I would go, well, what do you want me to do with this? He goes, that's something I want to put in the book. It would say something like, gangway at Matson. I'm not in your head, Dave. I don't know what you want to say in this book. And we would talk, and we both worked nights. So it was very common for Dave and I to get off work at 2:45 in the morning, and as we're driving home, my phone would ring. My husband got used to it. He understood it was Dave calling at that time. And he'd go, I thought of something else. He goes, babe, I thought of something else. And I'm driving. I'm like, okay, talk to me. So he'd tell me the story, and I'd go home at 3 in the morning. I'd kind of write it down so I wouldn't forget. After about a year and a half of this, I was my dining room table, my formal dining room table at home. I took all the scraps of paper, and I laid them out, and I'm scratching my head, and I'm going, Dave, I think we have enough for about 4 or 5 chapters, but you got to tell me what to say. And we organized it into these chapters, and he came to my house. He sat at my kitchen table. I was pregnant. I should have said that. We finished the book. My baby number 4 was born October 6, 2008. We finished the book September 30th. My son was due September 30th, but he was a week late. And I think my son was a week late because he wanted me to finish the book. That's what Dave says anyway. He came over, he sat at my table, we organized the book, I drafted as best I could because I didn't know what I was saying. He took it, he proofread it, he corrected it, he called me, we made changes, and he had a book. And then we went through the publishing process. And I learned so much about the ILWU and the waterfront and his social justice, his political reform, his views, doing that more than ever. And I know that my brothers and sisters who have come before me, it's Harry Bridges, the founder of our union, Harry Bridges. But for my generation and younger, it will definitely be Dave Arian, because that's where I got my education from. And I'm very selfish because, and I know I've talked to Justine about this, Dave died on my birthday. And he was so important to me, and I was so angry that day because life is not fair. And 72 is too young. My dad was 71 when he died, and I was angry then. But Dave had so much more to offer, and so much died with him, his experience and his knowledge, and it's just not fair. And I hate to have that commonality with him now. I'm thankful for you for sharing him with us. We grieve with you. And for future board meetings, I'm already one step ahead. I'd like to speak in favor of the motion to rename the street south of 22nd to Dave Arian, whatever it will be, Way, Drive. He's got the drive, consider that. But I know I'm ahead of that. But thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. God bless you, and thank you.
I just want to quickly say to the Arian family on behalf of the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, we miss him so much. And Dave used to correct me on what our job was. We sit here and we provide advice to the board to keep them out of trouble, talk about risk. And Dave would correct me all the time and say, I wasn't here to keep him out of trouble. I was here to get him out of trouble once he got himself into trouble. Sorry I couldn't keep him out of this trouble. We miss him.
Wow, it's been hard to sit here and hear all of this. I come from a different perspective. I'm not on the labor side. I'm actually on the waterfront side. And my first run-in with Dave Arian was him and Norm Tuck over here. And they came up to Richmond when the Iowa was sitting in Richmond, and we were refurbishing it. And I met the two of them and another person at the gate. And my first taste of Dave was he went right at it. I mean, he came right at me with solid, hard questions, and I didn't even know where it was coming from. And within about 5-6 hours, we quickly became friends. But he saw, for those of you that may remember the Iowa history, it was challenging. It was very, very challenging. And he got up there and saw through it. And he realized that there was much more to it than what may be going on down here. And I'll never forget watching that board meeting, streaming up and sitting on the ship in Richmond, refurbishing it. I had no history down here at all, and watching that board meeting and him coming in and saying to the board and the staff, he said, this is going to happen. This is going to happen, and this is going to change the future, and we've got to do this. And, of course, the commission voted to do this, and I took that very serious when getting down here, that we had to carry that torch and change the waterfront. And, he was always there. Within 6 months of getting here, he convened a waterfront marketing meeting upstairs, and we started pushing on the waterfront marketing. He was involved. He supported Fleet Week. He always did his best on the waterfront side. Like I said, once again, the side I understand. He always believed in a vibrant waterfront, a better San Pedro, a better community. And what we see out there today is in my mind, started with his vision at this Port of Los Angeles. So I personally am forever grateful for how he supported us. My thoughts and prayers to the family. Difficult times, but we're here to support. The ship's here to support. We'll keep him in our memory. We also opened the bid meeting in honor and memory of David Arian yesterday. So thank you all, and my thoughts and prayers are with everybody. Thank you.
I know what Dave would tell me, him sitting in that chair. He goes, "Hey, Tommy, take off that tie, man, because you're choking me out, man. I got my Aloha shirt on, and you don't, man. What's going on?" I've known Dave for a long time. I met Dave through my predecessor, Larry Henderson, which was an organizer for the IBW, Local 11 electrical workers. And it was funny because when I first started off as an organizer, Larry Henderson used to take me to all the job sites, non-union job sites in the harbor area. And then our last stop was the Harbor Commission. And that was one of his tasks. And he goes, "Hey, Tommy, the first person I want you to meet is Dave Arian. That's the person I want you to meet. Solid brother. You get to meet him because when I'm gone, you're going to be dealing with them." And I said, okay. When I met him, I mean, a lot of the people earlier that spoke, bigger than life, I used to call him Big Dave because he was bigger than life. And when he used to bring up his trips to Hawaii, and he would mention, about Hawaii all the time, and then I started calling him Big Wave Dave. You got to catch one of those big waves at the North Shore, brother. And every time I used to come to the Harbor Commission meetings, and I see him, we always gave each other a hug, and we always talked about family. My condolences to the Arian family, to the Harbor Department, to everybody that showed up today. This brother, I mean, just bigger than life, genuine, talk about discipline, integrity. I mean, that's, everything about him was just big. And I love you, Dave. On behalf of our membership, 12,000 members in the IBW, we love you. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm here on behalf of AltaSea at the Port of Los Angeles, and the entire AltaSea family. Jenny Crusoe is here with me. Our board members offer our love and our prayers and our condolences to the family. We have been, as a team, engaged in a big, audacious, tough project, just like Jonathan. I could hear it in Jonathan's voice, that we have these projects in the port that we're committed to, that are important for our community. And one of the things that drives us is that if Dave was so committed to this community, if he was so committed to the port, he was so committed to the women and men of his union, but also of his extended community, then we should be too. As Cindy said, he's been a beacon for us, and we've felt the support every day in every way. And I will say to the Ambassador's Challenge, we can all talk, but what will we do? Well, we in the AltaSea team will double down and triple down, and we'll do everything it takes to bring this project in. We know that we were a small sliver of his life, and the women and men of the union were I think the biggest sliver of his life outside of his family. And with apologies to real union people, when I was thinking of Dave this morning, I was thinking of that oft-heard quote, that an injury to one is an injury to all, that's carried through the House of Labor. But with Dave, I think the converse is also true. A blessing to one is really a blessing to all. When he would give me unsolicited advice and tell us how we can do this project, he was blessing me, but he was blessing the entire community. And when he blessed you, each one of you, in the way that he would bless you, really what he was doing, he was building the fabric of this community, whether his community was international, but our community is local. And so we thank him for that, and we thank you, the family, for sharing him with us. And God bless you.
Like all of you, Dave's passing just broke my heart. But I come today with also a heart filled with gratitude. Gratitude to the Port of Los Angeles, to the commissioners, to Gene Soroka, to all the staff, for all the love and respect you showed to our friend. Naming Dave Arian Way is just part of that. He was so proud to be a harbor commissioner, and he was so proud of all of you. And it's just really lifted my heart in the last few months to see how much love and respect you guys have given him during his hardest times. So thank you. Also, gratitude to his family. The single greatest thing a person can do is what they leave behind, and that is their family. And the way this family conducts themselves is just awe-inspiring. The way they rallied around Dave in the last few months, I've never seen anything like it. I really haven't. And I'm so proud that I'm your friend. My gratitude for the ILWU. You mean so much to this community. This community would not be what it is without the ILWU. The ILWU would not be what it is without Dave Arian. And I know that other than his family, there's probably nothing in his life that meant more to him than his community and his working class brothers and sisters. When I think of Dave, I think of basically three words. There's many, but three stand out. Fighter, mentor, and delegator. As a fighter, he spent his life working for social justice, fighting for the working class, fighting for his community. This fight wasn't just a fight that was theoretical, it was often very real. You know, somebody mentioned earlier about him being arrested numerous times. He was arrested because he was standing on the line for social justice. That's why he was arrested. But he also fought in ways, you know, those of us here who grew up in San Pedro, we get in scraps. Sometimes we get in scraps too much. And Dave, I once shared with Dave that I was baptized, confirmed, and married in Mary Star, and he got this smile on his face, and I didn't understand why that was funny. And he told me, well, I grew up on 8th Street, Jewish kid in the 50s. He had a lot of scraps across the street from the church. As he told the story, I kind of got the feeling that he was probably on the losing end of most of those scraps. But I figured he probably got them back with his mouth. But the funny thing about Dave, and not funny thing, but really wonderful thing about Dave, is those same people he maybe fought with as a kid, fought with as an adult, are people he later became friends with. And not just slight, kind of friends, close friends. I've never really in my life, I can't think of too many people who had a greater power to forgive and to move on and find common ground where there used to be division. It's a lesson that we all obviously in these times can learn. And it's when Dave was appointed as a harbor commissioner, people said, wow, he's a fighter. He's a labor guy. And I said, no, he's a connector. He brings people together. And that's how I remember him more than as a fighter. Dave was a mentor. I'm one of the many, 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 many people in this community who was mentored by Dave. And I'm better for it. And I'm grateful for it. And the way he mentored you was so simple. You didn't even know you were being mentored sometimes. You'd meet him for coffee over at Harry Bridges Institute at the Memorial Hall, and you'd walk away and later realize the pearls of wisdom that had been handed to you. And as you get older, that wisdom becomes even more important. Delegator. It's already been said, Dave would come up with an idea and find somebody else to do it. Justine, his daughter, called him the master delegator. But one thing that I think is important to understand is that when he delegated something to you, he didn't delegate it in a way where he expected you to do what he wanted you to do. He expected you to go out and he had respect for you. He gave you the power to do it, and then he let you do it. He let you do your job. He didn't just say, go do it, and then try and tell you what to do. He let you do it the way you thought it should be done. So in that power became so much more than just running out a task on his behalf. I got the honor to sit with him for just a few minutes 3 days before he passed. And I promised him that as a master delegator, what he had delegated to us would continue. We would all, those of us he mentored, continue his work. And that's the greatest thing I can say about him. So when I drive down 22nd Street and I look to the right and I see Dave Arian Way, I'm going to think, there is a Dave Arian Way. So I thank you again. It's just perfect. Thank you.
I met Dave for the first time about 30 years ago. And one of the things I know with Diane and Norm and everybody else knows, they had an event every year. I'm sure they still do. Cesar Chavez Memorial Dinner for working class heroes. And I know there's been a lot said, but I think that Dave would want to make sure that you need to understand the roots of his strength were people who weren't necessarily holding office or doing anything else, but the rank and file union members who every day provide an example for being the best, at their job, but as a community member. And we used to have a ward, and we get a nominee. I was the business manager at Palo Drivers Local 2375, and a third generation member. It was a great honor to spend the whole night honoring people that just did it on a daily basis, who needed to be honored. And I know Dave would be mad if that wasn't mentioned in this esteemed crowd. Same as struggles. I worked with the Harry Bridges Institute and Dave when the LWU was being locked out, when the USCW was under their struggles. And I know Dave would want to also mention UTLA and their struggles right now. It's important to understand the contribution of rank and file working people in the community. And Dave would want to make sure that is the first basis of it. Secondly, there were a lot of parallels. When I've met Dave and when I started working with Dave, we talked about Pedro, and I was just talking to other people, and I know people here who coach my children, people I worked, Miss Butler, played sports with, her son, and we're neighbors. That's the great thing about Pedro in comparison to the city of LA, is the fact that my wife came from Alabama, and she used to get upset because when I went to the grocery store, I knew half the people from different hats. And she goes, now, how do you know that person? Do you know their name? I go, no, I know that we played on the Raiders together back at Friendship Park. But that's the good thing about it. We knew that there was a validation of people. And I was a city commissioner at times and everything else. The great thing that has happened that has transformed not only the cleanliness of the port and the coalitions of Long Beach, with Long Beach, but it's the fact that we need to understand who our neighbors are and how much respect they deserve when we make these decisions as a community representative, whether it be a labor representative, whether it be a commissioner, whether it be an elected official. And I've been blessed to understand those connections. My boss was raised in Pedro as a Jewish person and scrapped one way or another. And when I first met Dave, they're like going, hey, they didn't know each other as labor reps. They knew each other as neighbors. And it's important. I can go on and on. But his life was a bonus to us all. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, President Lee, commissioners, and the Arian family. Our condolences are with you. I met Dave when he joined the commission. I didn't know him for the last 30 years, but I've known him since he joined the Harbor Commission. He was a great commissioner. He was passionate, and he made the Harbor Commission meetings much more interesting. You knew where his heart was. When I would meet with Dave and I would talk to him, you knew that he cared about his family first, the union, and San Pedro. And those items always came into every decision that he made as a harbor commissioner. When I would meet with him, we would talk a little bit about family, and then the next thing, he would spend the next 20 minutes telling me about how the industry is screwing up and what we needed to do to get to straighten out. And he always had good ideas. Dave looked towards the future. He looked always towards the future, ways for the port, the union, and industry to be relevant. How can we adapt to move forward so that we keep the jobs here? It was all about keeping the jobs, growing the jobs, and keeping them here. And how do we make the workers safe and keep them employed? I remember one time Mario mentioned that he does yoga in Long Beach, and I had mentioned to him that I also do yoga. And he looked at me, and I said, yeah, but I do hot yoga. And he looked at me and he goes, you do? And I said, yes. He goes, well, what class do you do? And I said, well, I do a 70-minute yoga hot class. And he looked at me and he's at 90 degrees. And he says, well, I do a 90-minute yoga class at 110 degrees. He will be missed. We'll miss him at the commission meetings. We'll miss his guidance. Our condolences with your family. Thank you.
I came into this room today really to listen and pay tribute. I didn't fill out a speaker card, which is unusual for me, as many of you know. And then listening to everyone, felt compelled to make sure that everyone knows that Jack Barrich and I last year produced what's called the Stories of Los Angeles Harbor Area for Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow Oral History Project. Dave Arian is at the top of our list of 20 who spoke because he A in the alphabet. It was alphabetical order. And we are very proud that we included him. And my last deep conversation with him was in May when he was waiting to be filmed around the 15th or 16th. And we were in our quasi-green room, and we were chatting about macadamia nuts and the property in Hawaii that he had fortunately sold, although it wasn't in jeopardy over the volcano, he said, but he just really didn't want to be a macadamia nut farmer any longer. And, of course, I knew how proud he was of his children and the grandchildren, and that's the level of friendship we had. It wasn't about things with the port, because, frankly, we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, as some of you know, but we could agree to disagree, and we had a cordial, friendly relationship, and that Hollywood brush kiss when we'd see each other at Nico's Pizzeria. And as is suggested in this room today, when you keep the spirit alive, the person stays alive. The name of the street changing is also important because it stays there for future generations. It helps preserve that history. So I personally encourage and endorse that. If you want to see Dave continually, you can go to the website of the Stories of Los Angeles Harbor Area, and there are 5. We asked our candidates to bring in 3 to 5 stories. Dave had 5 great stories, and we could have done a whole movie just about him. And I am pleased to tell you, and I hope Jack won't mind if he's still in the room, that we'll announce it officially at our press launch, but we are turning our oral history project into a documentary film that will debut at the LA Harbor International Film Festival, March 17th. We hope you'll all be there. And that is so important, and you can also go to the website, and it's out on YouTube and Facebook, and to me, this is real social networking. I don't do that. I want to look at your faces, talk to you, look you in the eye, and revel and appreciate this person who did have a wonderful, dynamic spirit. So thank you for indulging me and for sharing your father and your brother and your loved one with us all in the community. Appreciate it.
This is our commission staff. We call ourselves the commission crew. We are Dave's supporting staff and had the honor to work with him for 8 years. We each all have our own stories, as many of you do, and our own relationships that are all so unique and independent from each other, but the same love that we all have. We all have our funny stories to share as well. As his scheduler, a funny story that I have is that he came over to my desk one day and said, I need a little more details on these meetings. And I thought, okay. So I pulled up the computer and the list of all the details come out. He said, well, I don't have that on my phone. I thought, oh, something's wrong. We look at his phone, and his phone had never been connected to his calendar. we thought, oh, well, I said, Dave, how do you know where to be all the time? And he said, right here. I said, well, why didn't you say anything? He goes, I don't know, I just thought you were a lame secretary. So it was so funny. We laughed about that, and we got his phone fixed, and he was straight on his calendar ever since then. And, you know, another great thing, he was so accessible to the community, so accessible to everybody. And I'd have phone calls all the time putting themselves on their calendar. In the beginning, I worked for him. I didn't know. You know, everybody's a friend, right? And I call up Dave and say, Dave, so-and-so called. He goes, oh, yeah, put him on my calendar. It was just his way. Call Amber, and it was a given. He would make time for everybody, and it was just amazing. We all have our own stories. I can tell you that when it was a 70th birthday party, he comes over and says, I'm having a 70th birthday party, and I'd like you to help Justine put together this event. I said, I'm ready with my pen and paper. Okay, who are we inviting? Everybody. He invited the entire Port of Los Angeles to his 70th birthday party. It was just amazing. There were people who believed they got the email in accident. We said, no, this is Dave. Dave loves everybody. So we just want to show our support. We offer our condolences. He was a boss. He was a friend. And we really are going to miss him. His very first meeting here, it's funny, Tommy mentioned the tie, but his very first meeting, he was voted as vice president. He said, okay, my first motion is no more ties in the boardroom. So that was just, you know, Dave's way. So again, we loved him. We love you. We're here for you. And our friendship will continue. And please reach out to us in any way that you can.
Good morning, and condolences to the family and friends. I really wasn't going to come and speak today, but after hearing all of you go on about Dave, I am moved to explain my relationship with Dave, which, like many of you, was at times contentious, but always heartfelt. I think I first met Dave on a picket line down at the Catalina terminal many years ago. And it's part of the one reason why the publication that I write for has been in solidarity with the working men and women of this harbor for the last 4 decades. Dave mentored me in a lot of things about working class, union ethics, and those are things that I have tried to pass on to every reporter and worker that comes to my door. But I think what Dave is actually giving us all today, right now, is an understanding of the sense of this community, a sense of how connected or interconnected the port, all of the ILWU union brothers and sisters are, the people who work in this community, live in this community. There is a network. There is this web that holds this community together, and Dave knew how to navigate that network. That's what he brought to this commission. This is what he brought to the Harbor Department that helped you navigate what those issues were in the community, and how to make your department successful, not overbearing with the community, how to connect with labor and make things happen in this town. And if there's anything that I can say about Dave, he was about making things happen, starting things, delegating. I know we were all going to miss him. I'm going to miss having coffee with him down at Sacred Grounds and getting into another argument about something. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ralph Appy. I'm actually was the past environmental manager here at the port when the whole Clean Air Action Plan was coming, and I just kind of hadn't planned on talking, but after seeing all the pictures go by, and about 80% of them were him standing in front of a clean truck, I thought it was probably important to even highlight that more than perhaps past speakers have. You know, Dave was special. A lot of people say he was passionate and he lost his temper. I got to tell you that in all the time I dealt with him, he was totally respectful. And I think there was a whole amount of class associated with his treatment of staff here at the I was going to say aquarium, which is my second role in life here at the port. And I just think that whole Clean Air Action Plan would have had struggled to go forward if it wasn't for him really supporting staff and asking hard questions, but doing it in a respectful manner. And he and I also shared community issues. I've been a long proponent of making sure kids in the community have something to keep them occupied and ensuring employment for young people and opportunities. And he and I shared that passion as well. And so he's really a special person. And I got to tell you that I count myself as one of the few fortunate people that got to share a bench with him looking out over the harbor. Thank you.
Commissioners, brothers and sisters, thank you for all the kind words that were said about Dave. It's fitting that Norman Tuck and I are sitting at opposite ends of the family bench here because we were the bookends of Dave's life. We were the people, the go-to people he went to before he had a port staff. I met Dave in 1976. I was an activist lawyer in Detroit representing auto and steel workers. Dave arrived with Sean and Justine in tow to work on the election campaign of an auto worker named General Baker, who was the founder of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, lest you ever doubted Dave's credentials. I knew nothing about Southern California or the waterfront, but soon found myself living with Dave in San Pedro. We were political allies for the next 42 years. Dave saw the world in terms of which side are you on. He wanted everyone to have a place at the table, and he was acutely aware of the need to expose all efforts to divide us, particularly based on race or gender. He made us believe we were better than we really were, and there was a reason for that. He wanted us to do everything he had on his list for us. He never went to college, but he was the smartest man I knew, because at an early age he learned the skill of critical thinking and class analysis. In the course of his legendary career with the ILWU, he sat through hundreds of meetings, and he often told me, if I can deal with the members of the ILWU and Local 13, I can deal with anybody. It served him well throughout his life. He loved San Pedro. He loved the waterfront. He loved being a longshoreman. Now, nobody else has said this yet. You kind of figured it. He loved being a harbor commissioner. He was uniquely suited for the task. He gave his time joyfully. He was an expert on the waterfront. He started talking about globalization and explaining it before people even knew what that concept meant. He was smart enough to figure out what the industry needed to grow in the right direction. He was a fighter for labor rights. He understood the needs of the larger community and the environment. But above all else, he had integrity. He thrived on the opportunity to give back and worked with the talented people he met at POLA. He especially respected Gene Soroka. He wanted the port to grow and be profitable. He just wanted to be sure that the workforce got their fair share and the community did not get left behind. The last several months have made us think about the imponderable. A world without Dave's analysis, enthusiasm, and dreams. Because Dave indeed had big dreams. He never lost faith that a better world was possible if we just came together and fought for it. He truly believed in jobs, peace, and equality. His loss is painful. We will honor him by continuing the fight. You should honor him by continuing his efforts to make this the greenest, most efficient port in America. The family has asked me to point out before they speak that they want to continue the work that Dave has done in areas of the Harry Bridges Institute and other things with the Dave Arian Legacy Project. And if anyone wants to know what they can do, go online to harrybridges.com and please support his work by contributing to the Dave Arian Legacy Project. Thank you.
Hey everyone. We weren't sure we wanted to speak because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to keep it all together. But here we are. After listening to everybody speak, we wanted to come up and mostly, just to thank you commissioners, and to thank the Port staff and the Port family, and everybody who came out today. As a lot of you know, our family has always had, my dad always had a very broad concept of family. It just didn't extend to people who he was directly related to. And for the folks here at the Port, you were his family, and he considered you his family. Whether it was Eugene or Jana or Mike, Amber, Julie, David, Tom, I saw you there, Glenn, he considered all of you family. And I think he invested in you like your family. And I think his hope is that you'll be able to, in the same way that hopefully, my sister and I are going to be able to continue his legacy, that you also will continue his legacy and work on the things that you worked on together and that are important for our community and for making this world a better place. So thank you. Thank you from us. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm Justine Arian and Arian Edwards, and in the process of a name change. And, as Sean said, we really are touched by the level of support and love and care you've given to our family and our father through all of this. It's really meant so much to us. We're very touched with the tribute to him today. Nothing in here that was said surprises me. And what really stands out is, the impact that my dad has made on each and every person in this room and beyond this room. And his ability to, he was inclusive is one of the things that stood out for me today, is his level of inclusiveness, how every person mattered, and every person is here to make a difference in your own way. And that's our family's motto. And what we learned from my dad is we are here to make a difference. And so what I would say to each one of you here today is to look deep into your heart at what that means for you. What does it mean for you to make a difference in your family, in your community, in your job, in this world? What's important to you? And to carry that forward, to look at where you could step up and use your voice even more, where you can make a greater difference, because that would carry on our dad's legacy, that he would continue to live on in each one of us in this room by you stepping up and making a difference in something that you care about. So thank you all. And what Diane said about the Dave Arian Legacy Project, before he passed, we asked him, how can we honor your memory? How can we keep your memory alive? What would be important to you? And he said, every year I want you to organize a rally or an educational project or a community event, organizing, educating young people, and I want it to be in my name. And so that's what the Dave Arian Legacy Project is and will be. So we hope that you all get involved with that in some way. And thank you all so much for being here and for doing this great honor to our dad.
President Lee and commissioners, if I may ask that we take item 6 at this moment, since we have so many people that are here at this moment. Yes. Item 6 is a resolution for the approval of street name change along the portion of Minor Street south of 22nd Street to Dave Arian Way.
Before you, Commission, it is recommended that we declare the portion of Minor Street south of 22nd Street to be renamed Dave Arian Way in recognition of Dave's leadership and career here in the Harbor Complex, the industry, and the world. The proposed location for Dave Arian Way has been described this morning as the street on Port Harbor District property south of 22nd Street all the way down to the Outer Harbor berth number 46, traversing past the fruit dock and all the way out to Dave's favorite bench. As background, Dave Arian was first appointed to the Los Angeles Board of Harbor Commissioners on September 24th, 2010, by then Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Current Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti reappointed Dave on August 12th of 2014. Dave Arian was a prominent leader and advocate for the Los Angeles waterfront as a union worker, labor leader, and supporter of many community organizations. Dave was a member of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union from 1965 to the day he retired in 2009 as a longshoreman, local and international union officer. Dave founded and presided as president of the Harry Bridges Institute since 1993. As an active member of the San Pedro and waterfront community, and as recounted here this morning, Dave had measured success across many areas in all of our community efforts related to the port, our residents, and our efforts here to better the places that we live and work. And therefore, in summary, Madam President and Commissioners, it is recommended on behalf of staff to the Los Angeles Board of Harbor Commissioners that we declare the portion of Minor Street south of 22nd Street to be renamed Dave Arian Way in recognition for Dave's leadership and career in the port industry.
As I was standing here, or as I was sitting there listening to everybody talk, I remember when Dave had something important to say, he stood right here, if you all remember. And on August 23rd is when he stood here and he told us about his diagnosis. I watched that meeting the other night. And he said to us, we need to keep doing what we do because it gives me energy. That's what he said here. And so today, by renaming the street, it's going to give us energy every day. And Justine and Sean, this is just a small thing we can do. There's much more to do, so I would like to be the one that makes the motion to approve this today. And I would like to add, if I can, that bench we keep talking about out there. I went out there this morning, actually, before I came here. It was a rookie move. I sat on it, didn't realize it was wet, so it's all good. I mean, I went out there a lot and just drove by. I saw the bench, and I'd look at the view, and so I thought I'd just do my own personal tribute to him this morning, and he let me know, the bench was wet. So, but I'd like to somehow maybe modify this motion and include that we memorialize this location with a plaque or something in his honor, because he used to go out here and not just think about, how we can make a difference collectively, but I really think he enjoyed the view of just being a Pedro kid and looking at all of the beauty that's around us each and every day. And that's the spot. So if the commission can entertain adding that into the motion, I think it would be a great honor to do that for Dave.
Wonderful. So we have a motion and a second, and with the understanding that all of us wholeheartedly and very passionately support this motion, I'd like to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.